Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in the She-Hulk season finale, Whose Show Is This? This is, by far, my favorite finale to a Marvel TV show. It was original, true to the comics, and it also teased some upcoming projects like World War Hulk, X-Men, Daredevil Born Again, and Deadpool.
This has a Deadpool in it? I'm excited.
Me too, so let's get to it.
Excuse me, do you have the movie Hitch where Will Smith teaches Kevin James how to have confidence in himself?
Oh yes, it's in the Will Smith Before section.
Oh, thank you very much.
Hey, no problem. What was I talking about? This episode opens in the style of the classic 1978 TV series, The Incredible Hulk.
Jennifer Walters, Esquire, lawyer, millennial.
Dr. David Banner, physician, scientist.
Now notice there are a few new additions, like Emil Blonsky's file from the Incredible Hulk movie, and these opening credits were also replicated for the opening of that film. This scene is effectively taking the place of the previously on segment that we see at the beginning of each episode. Doing this recap in the style of another Hulk TV show is foreshadowing the complete collapse of the fourth wall that we'll see at the end of the episode. From the beginning of this episode, we are being reminded that this is first and foremost a TV show. Notice that the aspect ratio has even shifted to a standard definition 4:3 ratio. And in this scene, we can see that when Jen transforms into She-Hulk, she is no longer Tatiana Maslany, but instead is another actress. This is in reference to how in the Incredible Hulk TV show, they brought in another actor in Lou Ferrigno to play the Hulk version of Bruce Banner.
Actually, in the show, it was David Banner.
Oh, right. Yeah, back in the 1970s when this show was on, the TV executive said that Bruce was a name that was too gay.
Who was running that show, the Intelligencia?
Ooh, nice reference. High five. When we see the name of the TV series is the Savage She-Hulk. Now that is a reference to not only the fact that the She-Hulk went savage in the last episode, but also a reference to the title of her very first comic run.
Sorry to bother you. Somebody to face the movie Hitch, can you think of another film that would give me confidence?
What are you talking about? You're a good-looking guy. Why do you need confidence?
Oh, well, you see, I'm losing my hair.
Well, my friend, the best way to prevent hair loss is to start when you still have hair left, and that is why I use Keeps. They're the sponsor of this video. There's actually a history of hair loss in my family, so when my hair started to thin, I did not waste any time. Treatments can take up to 4 to 6 months or more to see results. So guys, it is important to act fast, and you have to start early with the treatments and stick with it. So believe me, if your hair is starting to thin, don't ignore it or hope it goes away. Don't put this off. Start using Keeps now. In fact, the sooner you start using Keeps, the more hair you'll save. It's even proven to work on a puppet's scalp. Here you go, now massage that in for a little bit.
You got it.
Keeps has more 5-star reviews than any of their competitors, and that is why hundreds of thousands of men trust Keeps for their hair loss prevention medication. So guys, look, if you're losing your hair, don't ignore it. Do something about it now. For a limited time, go to keeps.com/ScreenCrush or click the link in the description to receive 50% off your first order. Now back to the Easter eggs. Following Jen's arrest, she was placed in the same cell that we saw Blonsky's Abomination in earlier in this series.
I'd like to start by saying that I feel great remorse.
Now, I think it's worth pointing out that Jen 100% could have bolted and avoided being arrested. There are very few people who could take her down, but the fact that she surrendered herself and allowed them to arrest her shows that she knows that running from the police would have only caused more trouble for her. It also shows just how much respect she has for the law. Mallory reminds her of her predicament.
You are an out-of-control Hulk. That's what all the witnesses saw.
Reminding Jen of her cousin's words in episode 1.
When people start seeing you as a monster that never goes away.
As a condition for her release, negotiated by fellow lawyers Mallory Book Pug and her best friend and paralegal Nikki, Jen is now required to wear an inhibitor. The same inhibitor that she negotiated as part of Blonsky's plea deal.
Is ordered to wear an inhibitor in perpetuity.
Now the inhibitor is also a kind of callback to the comic book, where Jen got a mental block that at one point prevented her from turning into She-Hulk, so she wore a device that would allow her to transform.
Existential crisis stuff.
Jen asked if they called Bruce, to which we hear it went straight to voicemail because he's off planet.
Managed to sound very calm considering I was calling the freaking Hulk himself.
When the press are surrounding Jen's house, this reminded us of when the press were surrounding Peter Parker's house in Spider-Man No Way Home, as well as when the press were obsessed with She-Hulk earlier this season. Jen is fired from GLKH and has to move in with her parents, and something kind of similar happened to her in the Charles Soule She-Hulk run, where her high-end legal career falls apart and she has to start a smaller practice. The press even made sure to call her
the female cousin of the Hulk,
because in the comics and in society, a woman's only defining trait is her sex and how she relates to a man. Later, her mom even calls her Girl Hulk. And I just gotta say, guys, this is why secret identities are a good thing. When the press is chasing her, she runs into the house and her dad sprays a water hose at them. And this, believe it or not, is an Easter egg. It's a reference to the very first issue of She-Hulk. When Jen is being pursued by the henchmen of Nicholas Trask, her cousin Bruce uses a water hose to hold them off.
You serious?
In her childhood bedroom, we see a poster of the movie Legally Blonde on her door. Now, Legally Blonde is a movie about a young woman pursuing a career as a lawyer and having to face constant misogyny and ridicule along the way.
Oh, like She-Hulk.
Yep, exactly.
Did you hear the actress from Legally Blonde got stabbed last night? Reese something?
Witherspoon?
No, it was with a knife.
Ah, you got me. High five. And this is a poster for Julia Roberts' movie Erin Brockovich, another film about a strong, independent woman in a legal battle facing adversity along the way, constantly being underestimated, and it's actually based on a true story.
You know, I'm happy for her winning that Oscar, but you know, it really should have gone to Ellen Burstyn for Requiem for a Dream.
Doug, get out of my brain. So it's likely that Legally Blonde and Erin Brockovich were major influences for Jen in her youth, which is why she has these posters up on her wall. We can also see a pennant flag of UCLA. Now, in the comics, Jen attended UCLA Law School before going to Harvard.
You got into Harvard Law?
What, like it's hard?
And there's also a poster for A Midsummer Night's Dream, the Shakespeare comedy where the gods tamper in the lives of mortal men, much like in the way the god Kevin interferes with the lives of the She-Hulk characters. One character in Midsummer Night's Dream, Nick Bottom, is even transformed by the fairy Puck into someone having the head of an ass, similar to how the god Kevin transforms Todd into a Hulk. Now, Jen's investigation board with red yarn reminded us a lot of Deadpool when he's tracking down Francis.
Or that big board you keep in the basement when you're researching the...
We don't talk about that. Jen's message board is basically a psychoanalysis of online trolls. By using fake identities, they are able to create the illusion of support for ideas. They were also able to challenge ideas on social media platforms by inserting counter-arguments that appear to come from the grassroots. And this one reads, "This type of warfare is ongoing, and to defeat it is to identify its source," which actually foreshadows the whole frickin' ending. She-Hulk the show is combating trolls. It's combating the conventions of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So Jen, who represents the very concept of She-Hulk, has to go to Kevin, the source, to pitch a more appropriate ending for herself. Next, we see Dennis Bukowski lying about Jen on the news and even saying that they dated.
She was psycho way before she got those superpowers.
Now, Jen's mom asks if Jen can move the big bookcase for her.
Can you move the big bookcase for me?
And this is a reference to the post-credit scene from episode 2.
I'm glad you're staying hydrated, Dad, but this seems a little excessive.
Jen attempts to reach out to Bruce, likely searching for some comfort from her cousin who has been through this exact same situation.
I mean, one mistake, one freakout is literally life or death.
The messages won't deliver another reminder that he is currently off planet. Now, Jen attempts to text Blonksy, another person who can relate to what she's going through, but we can see that the text messages to him also don't deliver, as we learned in episode 7, The Retreat, because there is no service on Blonsky's land.
We don't carry it as a policy, you know, distractions from the outside and all that.
Jen then takes a moment for a fourth wall break.
This isn't even a reluctant superhero story. I'm just getting screwed over.
And then she asks us a pointed question.
Is this what you guys want?
And that is the question at the heart of this episode, and really of any finale. What does the audience want? How can we wrap up the series in a way that makes fans happy and also fits in with the characters? In a more meta way, it's asking us if we like to see this character suffer because she's a woman, and why doesn't she get to do more typical superhero stuff? But the end of the show answers that question for us. She doesn't get a typical story because she is not just another Marvel Studios product. Nikki is using the video she got from Jen's mom.
You might get a kick out of this video that Jen and her friends
No,
made in Lost.
Mom, can you send that to me, please?
Already did.
Oh, goodbye.
Which, by the way, good for Jen. In the first page of the Dan Slott run, they established that she did not party in law school, and so she's making up for lost time as She-Hulk. Nikki has uploaded that video to the Intelligencia site to gain their trust and learn more about them. So look, a harmless video of Jen dancing from college could be a reference to Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. This harmless video of her dancing from college has been used by critics as an attempt to make her look bad. So Jen goes back to the retreat and meets the Wrecker again, who I guess is actually just going to be a nice guy now. I'm kind of bummed by that because the Wrecker and the Wrecking Crew are great villains in the comics, and in the series, they're just kind of treated as a one-off joke. Jen is then reading Emil's book, Deep Haikus, should have been called Hulk-Kus, and I will die on that hill. The poem she reads says, "Our hearts beat the same. If I'm a monster, what's that make you?" This is a message that I think everyone online needs to take to heart. We're all just people, guys.
Oh, what fools you mortals be.
When Pug and Nikki are infiltrating the Intelligencia meeting, they're met with phone service issues, another hint that this meeting is taking place at Blonsky's land. Oh, and Pug, by the way, is the most underused character on this show.
Let's go!
I love this guy, and I love seeing Nikki having to play Cyrano to his Christian. Amongst the misogynists, we can hear them talking crap about Lady Thor.
And Lady Thor? Guys, she just sucks, okay?
Now, Lady Thor, of course, being Jane Foster's Thor that we met in Thor: Love and Thunder.
If you can't say Mighty Thor, I'll accept Dr. Jane Foster!
My favorite part of this is how the guy justifies his sexism.
I would have the exact same criticisms if she was a man.
Even though his only argument is that she's lame because she's a woman. And then comes the biggest twist in MCU history.
I created Intelligencia. I'm Hulk King.
What? But everybody already knew that.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious. And the obviousness of this plays into Jen's critique of the formulaic nature of the finale. And also in a way they don't comment on how every single Marvel Studios show thinks it needs a secret villain reveal at the end of the season. We then get confirmation that this event is occurring on Blonsky's property and that he is even making an appearance as the Abomination. But fortunately, Blonsky isn't actually involved with the Intelligencia.
Nothing bad, strictly for profit.
But his line here,
"Don't ask permission. Be powerful!"
is more like the Emil Blonksy villain that I know and love from the movie.
It's not what you've done, it's what you're gonna do. I want what you got out of Banner, I want that.
And then things get crazy. Todd hulks out, and actually his visual effects are a lot more reminiscent of the hulking out from 2003's Ang Lee Hulk film. Titania comes to help Jen. Bruce and the Abomination tee up for a rematch, and
none of these storylines make any sense. Is this working for you?
To which the viewer responds to clicking out of the show, which takes us back to the Disney Plus Marvel tab homepage.
Alright.
Jen breaking through the Disney Plus homepage is a direct reference to how she used to rip through her pages of her comics. She looks around to see which show she needs to jump into so she can make her way to Marvel Studios.
Marvel assembled. That'll do.
Now in the comics, she would frequently call out creators like John Byrne for their lazy storylines and for the suggestive way they drew her on the comics. Jen is doing this because she was sick and tired of watching other people have agency in the direction of her show, and she didn't get a say. What I love about this whole ending isn't just that it's meta and it's fourth wall breaking. We're actually watching She-Hulk, the concept as a character, directly challenge the audience to let her be more than just another Marvel product. It's so much fun. So she ends up going into Marvel Assembled. That's a Disney Plus exclusive that showcases the behind the scenes making of different Marvel shows and movies. So by jumping into this show, she has made her way into a universe outside of the MCU, our universe. An interview is being conducted in the background. We hear,
"So tell me about the Infinity Gauntlet, it's amazing."
And then a response of,
"So back when we were working on the first Thor movie, they had come to me and asked me to make a bomb."
Now, this is a reference to an interview with Marvel Studios prop master Russell Bobbitt. He's telling the story behind the Infinity Gauntlet that we could see in Odin's trophy room in the first Thor film. An Infinity Gauntlet that was originally just meant to be a fun background Easter egg. But then Marvel Studios decided to actually do the Infinity Gauntlet story for real, so they had to reveal that it was
fake. Most of the stuff in here is fake.
This QR code takes you to the sensational She-Hulk number 50. In this comic, She-Hulk goes to the offices of Marvel Comics, just like how in this episode she's going to the offices of Marvel Studios. There's also an I Want You Captain America poster, a play on Uncle Sam's I Want You posters that were used for army recruitment during World War I. And what's the name of the new Captain America? Yep, Sam Wilson. So this may be a subtle hint that Sam Wilson's Captain America will soon be recruiting She-Hulk to be an Avenger.
You want to stroll for that reach?
What? It's a pretty good theory. We see the poster several more times in the episode.
The poster clearly says, "I want you to put down your cell phone." This is a fourth wall break in itself, calling out the fact that most people divide their attention between the show they're watching and checking their stupid phones. Are you even listening to me?
Yes, I was. Look, I actually just got a text from Matt Singer who told me that the Put Down Your Phones posters are real in Marvel Studios and that they're more about protecting the secrecy of things that go on the lot.
Oh, that's interesting.
Thanks, Matt Singer, for that Easter egg. So Jen walks across the Disney lot in Burbank, where we see the 7 dwarves holding up the studio Studios roof, kind of like Atlas holding up the Earth. Now that's a design choice because Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is the first feature-length animated movie that truly put Walt Disney Studios on the map. And this famous statue of Walt and Mickey is also at the entrance of Disney World. Next, we see the writer's room for the She-Hulk show. The comics on the wall here are mostly from the Dan Slott run of She-Hulk, but these two on the bottom are from the John Byrne run of the book in the 80s, where her fourth wall breaks originated. And this Hulk comic is also part of the Planet Hulk series, which we're going to talk about a little later in the video. We can even see a few whiteboard notes in the office, like the idea that Jen's room has a Legally Blonde poster, and the act notes on the main board are green like the Hulk. There's also ideas for nanobots and lines of dialogue like, "Are you sure that's a real apple?" And this Hulk poster says to smash and shred documents, another callback to Marvel secrecy. She-Hulk is unhappy with the direction the finale is going and is confronting the writers about it.
The bad guy steals my blood in order to give himself superpowers. Where did you come up with that original idea?
Which is something that we've seen her do in the comics many times. And you know what? She's right. Superpowered blood is a MacGuffin in lots of cape flicks. Incredible Hulk.
Civil War.
Civil War. Amazing Spider-Man 2.
They made an Amazing Spider-Man 2?
No. Don't tell him. And then we hear mention of the man himself, Kevin.
This is the story that Kevin wants.
Kevin is in reference, of course, to Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios.
I would murder you to protect Kevin.
In the elevator Jen takes to see Kevin, we can see the word Disney and what looks like an S. The walls of the elevator likely read Walt Disney Studios. On the wall as she enters, we can see posters for Wakanda Forever and She-Hulk. There are also 3 Iron Man suits on the wall, mimicking the suit cabinet in Tony's basement. From left to right, we see the progression of his armor, from Tony's unpainted Mark II, his suitcase armor from Iron Man 2, and finally his final suit from Iron Man. Now, because this was Marvel Studios' first film, this is to chart the growth of the company. And then, of course, there is a model of the Infinity Gauntlet, a Hulk, Captain America behind the counter. Here we see Groot, probably Star-Lord, a She-Hulk, and several comics. And in the corner here, Thanos on his magic floaty chair.
The only matter I do not take seriously, boy, is you.
And by the way, the CGI on She-Hulk looks great in this episode. I really hope they have time to go back and patch her for the rest of the series. Jen has to sign a non-disclosure agreement, a reference to the extreme secrecy of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and to the many secrets that all of the actors of the MCU have to keep.
So because it's Marvel, I'm kind of sworn to secrecy, and I'm actually terrified for the safety of my family lest I say something.
This security camera footage of Jen reminded me of this footage of Wolverine from X-Men Apocalypse. The art in the hallway is also concept art from several movies. This one in the upper left is the Hulk fighting the Chitauri in the Avengers. This is Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy, and the guy gets thrown into Thor, reclaiming his hammer from the movie Thor. In fact, this whole scene where Jen fights through a lot of guards is very similar to the one where Thor fights his way through a square of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. And here we see that most of the concept art is from Guardians, except the one in the lower left, which depicts the arc reactor from Iron Man. Once Jen makes it past the guards, we meet Kevin.
Hello, Jennifer.
Now, the name Kevin is an acronym for Knowledge Enhanced Visual Interconnectivity Nexus, and it might be inspired by MODOK.
And do you know what MODOK stands for?
Mental organism designed only
for killing. For killing.
Now notice that the robot Kevin is designed so it looks like he's wearing Kevin Feige's signature ball cap. It's also cool that Kevin is a LOG acronym, kind of like S.H.I.E.L.D.
The Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division.
Because S.H.I.E.L.D. was actually the first connective tissue in Marvel's Phase 1 movies, with the agency popping up in some form in every Phase 1 film. This new character, Kevin, also reminded me of the Marvel character Mojo. Mojo is an alien from the planet Mojo World. It exists in a pocket dimension known as the Mojo-verse. The character of Mojo is basically a play on a greedy TV network executive. He broadcasts real events from the Marvel multiverse as a TV show, which seems to be what Kevin is doing with the MCU. Lots of fun things to spot in this room. For one, we hear her cousin Bruce delivering his iconic line from the Avengers. The movies we see here are Civil War, Infinity War, Black Panther, Multiverse of Madness, Thor Ragnarok, Endgame, The Avengers, Age of Ultron, Iron Man 1, WandaVision when she's facing off against the Sword Agents, and the Eternals. It's interesting that all of these movies either involve the Hulk or a hero battling a godlike being, like the Celestial or Thanos. Perfectly appropriate for the moment when Jen confronts her creator, Kevin. All of this also felt like a riff on The Matrix Reloaded when Neo enters the source of the Matrix and meets the architect, the person who essentially created him.
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix.
And of course, the design of Kevin, a robot that lowers from the ceiling, is a lot like Otto from WALL-E. Both of these robots are in control of a vast interconnected machine. There are also lots of comic books in the room. One that's very easy to spot is Avengers number 175, where the Avengers face off against the Collector. And like where the Guardians of the Galaxy were kind of formed, it's complicated. And what is Kevin Feige if not a man who collects our hopes and dreams and creates new superhero teams? Kevin references the computer computer graphics that made She-Hulk possible.
But you must first transform back to Jennifer.
Why?
You are very expensive.
And this is kind of an unintentional joke because the CGI on She-Hulk was very rushed by an overworked VFX department. Now notice though that when Kevin says,
"The visual effects team has moved on to another project."
Okay.
Right after that you can hear the drums from the Black Panther score. Because next up for the VFX artist is Wakanda Forever. Now on the right here we can see Infinity Gauntlet issue 4, when the heroes attack Thanos and basically everybody dies. Kind of like how Jen is coming to confront her creator, Kevin. Also notice how these pillars of comics are built to mimic the rotating racks that comics are often stocked on in drugstores, which is actually a terrible thing to do because they always make the top part of the book bend over and it harms the CGC grade considerably.
Hey, you should have boards in them, all right? Bloody savage.
We also see America Chavez comics, She-Hulk, Daredevil, and the Scarlet Witch, all characters that are featured prominently in the Multiverse Saga. And later on we'll also see issues of Sam Wilson as Captain America, Doctor Strange, Ms. Marvel, and right here this looks to me like an awful lot like the cover of Deadpool, which is a huge inclusion. For one thing, Deadpool is a mutant and he's part of the Fox X-Men universe. And this is the first time that we've actually seen him included in the MCU.
Any tips on getting into the MCU there, Korg?
Have a dream.
And when Deadpool does enter the MCU during the Multiverse Saga, he'll have to travel between universes, and he'll probably come to this room and communicate with Kevin. After all, Deadpool is the king of the fourth wall breaks.
Well, that's just lazy writing.
The comic even shows multiple Deadpools, probably portraying one of the many times he's fought himself in the comics, and in the movies that one time.
Hey, it's me.
And also in the movies this time.
You're welcome, Canada.
Here we see a prominent issue of Daredevil number 51 where Matt fights robots and he hallucinates, which could be what's happening to Jen in this episode. In the past, I've theorized that her fourth wall breaks are actually a manifestation of her inner monologue. So this whole ending could be her thinking through all the different ways that her predicament could end. As Jen makes her case to Kevin to change up the finale of her show, we get a lot of references to the MCU, as well as commentary on what this show is really about. Jen explains that her show doesn't need to have the typical earth-shattering Marvel ending because her show is not your typical Marvel show.
Distracts from the story, which is that my life fell apart right when I was learning to be both Jen and She-Hulk.
But isn't Jen traveling to a different universe where the MCU is controlled basically like a simulation? Isn't that pretty earth-shattering?
Yes, but that's exactly my point. By not following the typical formula of a Marvel show or movie, they ended up doing an even better job by hitting the nail on the head in regards to the overall theme of the MCU, which is a universe of heroes who struggle to balance their personal life and the life of a superhero. A universe of movies that always left its audiences in absolute awe. The Infinity Saga has come and gone. Marvel Studios now realizes they're in a whole new game. And people have often said, well, how do you top Infinity War? How do you top Endgame? And yet, the MCU has still not ceased to amaze us. And right when we get to a point that maybe the MCU is starting to feel just a little tired, a little played out, they literally flip the script. And by doing so, they have stuck to the theme of the MCU. Not following the same formulaic storytelling, no, but following the same game plan they've had since day one. Keeping the audience on their toes, staying one step ahead of every theory we could possibly think of, doing things that a year ago they would have said they'd never do.
Wow, that's deep.
I know, right?
Now talk about the X-Men. Do it now.
Yes, there was a reference to the X-Men.
When are we getting the X-Men?
I cannot tell you that.
We also heard a reference to the mini daddy issues of the MCU, a callback to this scene from earlier in the season.
That is for billionaires and narcissists and adult orphans for some reason.
Jen also says that the whole blood plot sounded a lot like Super Soldier Serum, which is interesting because in the MCU, Bruce Banner became the Hulk when trying to recreate that original serum.
So this Dr. Banner was trying to replicate the serum they used on me?
Even this line of Kevin's,
"Some are better than others,"
is a very common thing that we all say about the MCU. When Jen says to remove Bruce,
and Bruce swooping down from literal outer space to save the day in my story?
Kevin hints at World War Hulk.
But we were going to introduce...
Save it for the movie.
Now, is this a confirmation that we'll be getting a World War Hulk movie?
Talk about that at the end of the video. Finish the Kevin stuff.
You're right. So I also wanted to touch on the fact that Kevin is literally changing the MCU in front of our eyes as if it's a computer program. Like Doug mentioned, he's treating this almost like the whole thing is a simulation. Like this scene where Daredevil drops in out of nowhere. It's literally like a video game character spawning in.
Jen, I'm here to help.
Hey, Daredevil.
It's almost eerie how directly in control Kevin is of the MCU.
But Kevin Feige is in control of the MCU.
No, I mean Kevin the robot.
Kevin the robot represents Kevin the Feige.
I think it's safe to say that we've got a lot to talk about in regards to Kevin.
Oh, do I smell a follow-up video?
Yeah, you do. High five. As Jen is leaving, we hear Kevin say,
See you on the big screen.
Really?
No.
Now, I don't buy that for 1 minute. Jen is definitely going to be in an upcoming Avengers film, and I wouldn't be surprised if she shows up in Captain America: New World Order, and maybe she'll even be in whatever Marvel has up their sleeve with this World War Hulk movie. We get a hint that Pug may even have a little crush on Jen like he does in the comics. Matt is vindicated after a scene from last week's episode.
I'm Daredevil.
And Titania recognizes him.
Hi, Daredevil.
We then get a Fast and Furious style ending with Jen's
family.
Jen and Matt appear to be a thing now, which is interesting considering he's based in New York and she's in LA. I'm curious if they'll have a long distance relationship and continue to be a thing in Daredevil Born Again. And let's not overlook that this is actually the first time MCU Daredevil is in the same vicinity as the Hulk. Seeing Matt Murdock in this world was already awesome, but seeing him share the screen with one of the original 6 Avengers really hits home that he's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And speaking of Hulk, we also met his son, Skaar.
This is my son, Skaar.
Wow, you're family.
Now, look, it's no surprise that a guy like the Hulk would have fathered a son on Skaar. The guy was a professional athlete. He was the most popular person on the planet. I'm sure he laid more pipe than a John Deere trencher. In the comics, though, Skaar's origin is very heartbreaking. In the comics story Planet Hulk, the Illuminati send Hulk to another planet because he's just too darn dangerous. Hulk becomes a gladiator, he ends up leading a rebellion, then he's crowned king and gets married. But before his wife can give birth, she's killed in a bomb blast. However, his unborn son lived through a combination of gamma radiation and old blood magic tied to the planet. Now, it's a great story in the comics that they seem to have just glossed over in the series, so it's kind of likely now that we're not going to be getting a World War Hulk movie. But Skaar is now around to join the Young Avengers. They just have to find time to give him, character development.
Children, I lost the word there.
When She-Hulk is walking up the steps of the courthouse, it's an homage to this classic cover from the comics. And of course, we can't end the series without Jen being hit with another stereotypical question like this.
Tell our viewers, who are you wearing to court today?
Okay.
In the credits, we can also see Kevin reading a copy of Savage She-Hulk #1. And then we get to the return of the post-credits scene.
You took your time.
Now this is a callback to Wong having offered Emil asylum at Kamar-Taj.
I offered him asylum at Kamar-Taj. Just truly lovely this time of the year.
And when Blonksy says,
You got sucked into another show, didn't you?
he's referring to Wong binge watching a show such as The Sopranos. But this could also be a meta reference that perhaps we'll be seeing Wong appear in another MCU show very soon.
We're really in an era of peak TV.
And when Blonksy asks if they have Wi-Fi, that's a reference to this scene from the first Doctor Strange.
What's this, my mantra?
The Wi-Fi password. We're not savages.
Now this also means that Blonksy will be a free man, just in case some government agency wants to recruit him to be the second non-super soldier on their new team. Talking about the Thunderbolts. Please put Blonksy in the Thunderbolts, Kevin. Please do it.
No.
Aw, whatever, Kevin.
Hey, did you find everything you needed?
I sure did. Now I have hair. So now I never have to sit through the movie Hitch.
Awesome, man. I'm glad I could help. And don't forget, if your hair's starting to thin, click our link in the description to try out Keeps today. That's all the Easter eggs we found, but if you found any, let us know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe or smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.